All right, we'll get started here in 1 second to make sure everything was up and running. And I wanted to make sure I had the new Outlook, day one Outlook from the Storm Prediction Center loaded up and updated. That just came out at 3 o'clock. So we just posted those images to our social media accounts. And then here we'll kind of break everything down more in detail and explain what we expect for tonight as we see storms develop off to the west. Still wait until we get everything loaded up and make sure everybody's logged in here. We will record this and post this to the page, so that will be available on the page for you to view after at the end of this broadcast. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Again, this is the afternoon video update for the potential for severe thunderstorms tonight, March 14th into March 15th, Saturday morning. We'll take a look at what we know so far. Again, obviously winds have increased this afternoon. So if you've been outside or even sitting in your home, you can hear the winds howling outside, gusting pretty good. So far, we've seen wind gusts about 30-35 miles an hour at most locations at our mesonet sites. We are seeing that mixing occurring off to our west. We expect dew points to mix down a little bit here in the tri-state, probably in the low 50s as some of that drier air to the west works in. That's kind of to be expected. We also expect that moisture to increase again ahead of that line of storms tonight. We'll kind of explain that here shortly. Again, all the severe weather is kind of it looks like well after midnight now. That line looks to move into our southern Illinois counties around midnight. And then for the metro area, we're kind of looking at 2 or 3 a.m. now, maybe a little bit later. But again, this line of storms is going to be moving very fast. So we'll see it quickly push through and push out. Damaging winds. I've been hitting the damaging wind things for a couple of days now. And a lot of people are just kind of going with the general, what the Storm Prediction Center is saying. From what I've looked at for models, I'm concerned about damaging winds, widespread damaging winds. We're not talking about just the typical 60 mile an hour wind gust. We're talking at maybe 70, maybe 80 mile an hour wind gust. Again, the winds will be howling off the surface of 5,000 feet or more. We're looking at winds from 60 to 80 knots. That transitions down to the surface. We could easily see those damaging wind gusts produce damage in a wide swath across the tri-state. So that's been the concern. That was the reason for the increase to the moderate risk by the Storm Prediction Center. Tornadoes, that tornado threat is really looking like it might stay off to the west of the tri-state. Again, cannot rule out QLCS tornadoes, brief spin-ups within the line. We see a lot of those here across the tri-state. They do their damage, they dissipate. Usually they're not on the ground that long. Again, low chance of QLCS tornadoes. I don't think we're going to see the strong tornadoes here at the tri-state because this line is going to be outrunning the best moisture and instability as it's pushing through the tri-state. So I expect to see a gradual weakening trend. But I expect those damaging winds, that damaging wind rest, to stay the same across the area tonight. So I expect damaging winds across the tri-state. We're already seeing gusty winds with the non-thunderstorm winds, gradient winds, before the line of storms even pushes into the tri-state. So again, we can still see gusts up 40 to 55 miles an hour through 4 a.m. on Saturday. How far south that line develops, looks like it's going to fill in. Kind of questionable on the supercells. We'll kind of break it down here when we get into the maps here shortly. Again, we've gone over the sheltering guidelines on our past 2 videos. Again, your worst options, you don't want to be in a mobile home, you don't want to be in a vehicle, you don't want to be underneath a highway overpass. Avoid large rooms such as gyms and manufactured housing. Best options, interior room of a well-constructed home or building or a basement. And then the best option, your constructed tornado-safe shelters, which are offered here in the tri-state as well. So that's something you're interested in. We'll try to get a graphic together and post that so you know where you can get that information. So this is the 3 p.m. update from the Storm Prediction Center. The moderate risk continues for most or all of southern Illinois. Pretty much our Wabash County along the Wabash River there in southwest Indiana, Gibson, Posey, and then along the Ohio River there, Union, and down into Crittenden County, Kentucky. Again, enhanced risk pretty much covers the rest of southwest Indiana and western Kentucky, and a slight risk the further you go off to the east. Hail probabilities, again, I think the best hail threat's going to be off to the west. That's kind of where the best tornado and hail threat will be, especially with supercells off to the west. Again, that's where the best moisture will be. We'll continue to monitor dew points here. If we see anything change, then we might be concerned about tornadoes here. But if we get that mixing like we expect dew points to lower. We expect them to increase once again as that line of storms develops and the dry line pushes in towards the tri-state. So again, the greatest chance of hail of potentially 2 inches or larger will be off just west of the tri-state. Across the rest of the tri-state, a 15% risk area, mainly covering hail potentially up to an inch, maybe a little bit bigger. Tornado probabilities, again, a 5% probability here over our eastern portions, a 10% risk here across southwest Indiana, western Kentucky, and most of our southern Illinois counties, with the exception of the southwest tip of the counties that we cover here. That's where they're in that 15% risk. I'll kind of show you here when we look at the 18Z HRRR, how I think that might be more to the west. But again, we're not discrediting the tornado threat. It's just not as high as what we originally thought it was going to be based off model data from this morning. Again, damaging winds, I can't hit that hard enough. That's going to be the main concern. And we're talking about damaging winds that will do tornado damage. You know, you're looking at 70, 80, potentially even higher winds as wind aloft gets brought to the surface. You know, it's not going to take a lot for a shower or a thunderstorm to bring that wind to the surface and cause a lot of damage. So 45% risk across all of southern Illinois, and then along the Wabash and Ohio River. Our counties there of Gibson, Posey, Union, down into Crittenden County. 30% risk across the rest of the tri-state, with the 15% off to the west. Again, these are all probabilities of what we expect for tonight from the Storm Prediction Center. We will go ahead and let me get these maps loaded up real quick here. We'll take a look at the latest HRRR, which just came in a second ago. And we'll get that loaded up real quick. Again, the best chance for severe weather again is looking after midnight tonight. We'll see those storms develop. So actually they're developing right now, mainly across far eastern Kansas and into Missouri. There are pretty much an extensive line of storms, severe thunderstorm warnings, pretty much from Kansas City back down to just north of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Let me get that map pulled up real quick, and I'll just show you what we're watching, where this line is developing off to the west. Again, that's kind of where we're watching for the development of the line. And then we'll watch for individual supercells to develop to the west and southwest of the tri-state here tonight. As that line of storms develops and moves off to the east. So here's the latest radar image off to our west. What I was talking about, you can see those pretty much those polygons stretching from just north of Kansas City, just north of Bentonville, Fayetteville area, and Arkansas. Again, really not that impressive on radar, but we're talking about strong winds aloft that will easily be brought down to the surface and cause damaging winds over a large area. So while this is not really an impressive radar signature, that's how strong the winds are aloft. And this is pretty much all it takes on radar to bring those winds down to the surface. So that's why we're especially concerned about damaging winds tonight across the tri-state. And that's where we're going to keep our focus tonight. Again, cannot rule out some tornadoes. I still think the best threat for tornadoes will be off to our west. We'll take a look here at the 18Z HRRR. Again, you can kind of see how those storms have developed to the west. We'll continue to see that line develop off to the west, pushing into central Missouri, pushing across central Missouri by about 7 p.m. So this is 7 p.m. So we see that line pretty much stretching from western Iowa back into central Missouri, even some storms developing in northern Arkansas there. We're also going to be keeping an eye on storms to the south here near Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, and then some development here near West Tennessee and into Arkansas. That could cut off some of the moisture coming into the tri-state. So we'll have to see how all this develops right here. You can see that line continues to push off to the east. So this is at about 10 p.m. You can see that line pushing into the St. Louis metro. You see some storms trying to push into the tri-state. We will have a cap here in the atmosphere. We've kind of been talking about that for a couple days here. So that will kind of prevent much of anything from pushing into the tri-state until this dry line and cold front pushes into the area and helps break that cap. But you can see right around midnight here, that's when we see that line of storms pushing into tri-state. You can even kind of see a bow here over our northern counties, Clay, Richland, Lawrence, Wayne, Edwards, Wabash County. You could see some stronger winds right there. But you can kind of notice the weakening trend. So if we go back one image, you can kind of see how this line is pretty solid. Some pretty strong echoes there. As it crosses the Mississippi River into the tri-state, we kind of start to see it fall apart a little bit. Again, damaging winds, that's a give me right here for tonight. So that's your concern as far as what we need to be worried about. Again, we're looking at very strong winds that any of these storms will bring to the surface. So that's kind of the biggest story tonight. Again, you can still see kind of that line falling apart, but all these individual showers and thunderstorms will produce damaging winds. So that's why you need to be prepared to seek shelter. Again, we're not looking at just weak winds. We're looking at very strong winds that will cause damage, cause trees to come down, rip siding and shingles off, or even damage some smaller structures. So that's the concern for tonight. Again, by about daybreak, you'll kind of see all those showers off to the west. And then tomorrow afternoon, we'll see a few showers and thunderstorms. Again, wouldn't be surprised to see severe weather again. I'm thinking mainly Western Kentucky, but again, we do have some renegade cells here that are trying to develop across Southwest Indiana. If we see some sunshine tomorrow, we could see maybe a better chance of severe weather tomorrow, but this is the rest of the radar image as we move through the rest of Saturday and into Sunday. So we'll take a look at those winds again and why we are concerned about damaging winds. So this is your 850 winds. So this is about 5,000 feet off the surface. Again, these brighter yellows and golds, that's where you have winds of 65 knots or higher. As you can see, as we move on into the evening, so this is a little bit before midnight, you can see we're pretty much maxed out at 80 knots here across a large portion of southern Illinois, down into the Boot Heel of Missouri, and down to the lakes area of western Kentucky. That's going to continue to push off to the east across the tri-state. Again, that's why we are concerned about damaging winds. Those winds right there off the surface, 5,000 feet off the surface at 85 knots is pushing 100 miles an hour, not too far off there. When that kind of lowers down a little bit to about 3,000 feet, that's kind of where we're looking at 60 to 70 knots. So we're still looking at winds of, potentially 70 to 80 miles an hour across the tri-state here. Again, still see those winds pushing through as we get towards daybreak here. You can kind of see those winds relax a little bit. And as we move through the day, obviously we'll have the tornado outbreak going on well south of the area here across Mississippi and Alabama, where a high risk has been issued. Again, probably seeing some tornadic activity across portions of central and eastern Tennessee as well as the day moves on. We'll take a look at dew points here real quick, go over that again here, and then we'll discuss what we see with that. So right now, let's go back a couple clicks here. So this is your current conditions right now. So dew point of 55 here in Evansville, which pretty much lines up with the model. Again, you can kind of see those dew points again here drop off across southern Illinois, but you can also see this moisture pooling here across Arkansas and Louisiana. you're going to see that moisture get pulled northward, especially as that low pressure continues to wind up off to the west. That's going to help continue to pull that moisture northward. We'll continue to see dew points increase. So this is right around midnight here. You can see some 60-degree dew points making it all the way up here, just north of our tri-state area that we can cover. But you can pretty much see where that line of storms is right there, with the 50 to 60 degree, mid 50 to 60 degree dew points across the tri-state. Again, some of that moisture kind of gets cut off. We'll see how much is robbed from these storms down here to our south, but that's kind of where we're seeing in models where it looks like the line is weakening as it pushes into the tri-state, as it outruns the best moisture. So again, we're going to monitor the severe threat late tomorrow morning into the early afternoon hours. You can see those dew points peak again here in the 60s across southwest Indiana and western Kentucky. Obviously, there is still a severe threat. We are under a slight risk for severe weather over southwest Indiana and western Kentucky, and then a marginal risk for severe weather across portions of southern Illinois and western Kentucky. That's the latest we have here at the TristateWx Weather Center. We'll keep you posted tonight, have additional updates. Again, the main concern tonight will be damaging winds, isolated tornadoes, and some hail. But those damaging winds will be just as bad as tornadoes, so that's why you want to be prepared to seek shelter. That's the latest. We'll keep you posted.